Stumpjumper is one of the most long-standing names in the world of mountain bikes. The bike has been realised as everything from a hardtail cross-country whippet all the way up to, in more recent years, a full suspension trail bike. And if you're to believe Specialized, the new Stumpjumper is the ultimate trail bike. I was recently invited to Ainsa, in the north of Spain, to try out the bike, and quite unusually for a press trip, this took place over 3 days, meaning I had more than enough time to fettle with the bike and get it riding just so. Before we get to what it's actually like to ride, we'll quickly go over the spec and changes to the new bike. As in previous years, the bike is available in both aluminium and carbon versions, starting from the affordable up to the most ridiculously expensive and unaffordable S-Works models. But what is new for this year is the bike is also available in short travel and long travel versions. There's 4 different versions of the bike. The short travel 27.5 bike has 130mm travel front and rear. The 29 short travel version has 130mm travel on the front and 120 on the back. And then with the long travel 29, we've got 150 on the front, 140 on the rear. And for the long travel 27.5, we've got 150 front and rear. So no matter which bike you go for in the range, the travel will remain consistent, and it's only the wheel size and whether you go for a short travel or long travel version which determines what you have. Specialized claims that in redesigning the Stumpjumper, its primary goal was improving stiffness compared to the old model. And the keen-eyed of you will have already noticed that asymmetrical strut which connects the top tube to the seat tube. This is a design that was first used on the demo downhill bike way back in 2015, and Specialized claims is the most efficient way of improving stiffness overall in a frame. As well as adding the strut to the frame, Specialized has also worked with altering the layup of the carbon frame. And one of the cooler test bed frames we got to see kind of very clearly showed areas where Specialized had overwrapped carbon around the test frame, highlighting exactly where they thought improvements needed to be made to stiffness. All of this work adds up to a frame which Specialized claims is 8% stiffer and 100 grams lighter than the old model. In a move that will delight mechanics the world over, Specialized claims to have dropped all proprietary nonsense with the new Stumpjumper. And the most exciting among those for me has got to be the move and adoption of a threaded bottom bracket. Nobody hates a threaded bottom bracket. One of my favourite things about the new Stumpjumper from a livability point of view is the new cable routing. Through a mix of fixed internal polyester sleeving and some magic carbon weave, it's possible to push a gear or brake hose from the head tube all the way through the frame, and it comes out of the chainstay. And that's it. It's genuinely impressive, it doesn't rattle at all, and it's a completely fixed system, so you won't have to resort to using magnets, pokey sticks, or swear words. Plus tyres up to 3" wide can be run on any Stumpjumper frame now, regardless of wheel size. And there's also these new swappable chips which allow you to drop the bottom bracket by 6mm, which also slackens the head angle out by ½ degree. So what's it actually like to ride? During our press launch, like I said, quite unusually over 3 days, we took in over 110 kilometers of riding and almost 4,500 meters of descending, giving me more than enough time to really get to grips with what the new bike is like. Rather than chop and change between too many builds, I decided to focus my time on the long travel 29er version of the bike, and I was spoilt with a rather expensive $9,500 S-Works top end, very blingy model. So no complaints from the build from the offset, it was about as good as it gets, with a mix of Eagle X01 and XX1 in the drivetrain, a Fox 36 Fit 4 factory fork, Roval carbon wheels, and all manner of lovely carbon Specialized finishing kit. I was also particularly pleased to see a Butcher and Purgatory 2.6" tyre spec'd on the bike. There is of course a place for fast rolling, crowd pleasing tyres, but I personally think that a more capable, chunky, blocky tread is far more useful in the vast majority of situations. And given the weather was a little bit ropey during the trip, I was more than thankful to have those on the bike. As I mentioned before, Specialized claims that improving stiffness was its primary goal in redesigning the Stumpjumper, and honestly, its efforts seem to have paid off. In rough terrain, the bike tracks very well. Front end stiffness is very, very good in rough terrain also, though the big burly 36mm fork probably has something to do with that. In fast, tight single track, it's very, very accurate feeling, and there's no unnerving kind of wagging or vagueness from the rear end at all. It certainly improved the kind of level of confidence I felt on the bike, but it didn't dull the ride. It's still a very nimble, kind of accurate, fun handling bike. The 66.5 degree head angle, although not the most progressive, strikes a good balance between that playful handling and kind of capability at high speed. and I suspect that if I'd had the chance to swap the adjustable chips around, I think it would make what is already a very capable bike just that little bit more confident. One thing that really surprised me about the Stumpjumper was the much higher than average stack. At 641mm in a size large, coupled with those lovely 27mm rise bars, you have a really genuinely lofty front end which improves handling in steep terrain no end and somewhat counteracts for the slightly shorter than average reach. At 445mm in a size large, the reach of the Stumpjumper isn't particularly long when you compare it in the context of more progressive bikes these days. However, it's worth bearing in mind that at 140mm long in a size large, the head tube is a bit longer than average on the Stumpjumper. What this means is if you were to try and get an equivalent bar height on a bike with a shorter head tube, you would in effect reduce the effective reach on that bike. So take that 445mm reach figure with a pinch of salt, because if you're comparing the Stumpjumper to another bike, you must bear in mind that slightly longer than average head tube. This is of course a small change, but it is definitely one that's worth bearing in mind given that a handful of millimeters is all that separates many bikes. On the subject of those nice bars with the 27mm rise, at 780mm wide, they're probably wide enough for most tastes, but I personally would have preferred something slightly wider because you can always make a bar narrower, but you cannot make it longer. The suspension ticks all the boxes you would expect of a modern trail bike and the well-proven and much-loved FSR platform. Small bump sensitivity is very good, possibly even better than the old Stumpjumper. The mid-stroke is very supportive and it ramps up nicely towards the end of the stroke, which I think might be the new vertically compliant and laterally stiff of the mountain bike world. But there is truth to that statement. It's a very, very supportive platform and one that encourages you to take lines that might be a little bit more reckless than the 140mm travel of the bike might normally allow. While the bottom bracket height of 342mm isn't particularly low in the wider context of mountain bikes these days, I was still pleased to see Specialized speccing 170mm cranks across the board in a bid to reduce pedal strikes. Modern clutch-equipped drivetrains have pretty much made chain retention a non-issue these days, but I'm still also happy to see Specialized have made this cool little nicely integrated ISCG mounted top guide that goes alongside the Stumpjumper. It's a fairly inoffensive, fairly unnoticeable thing, but that's a good thing with a chain guide, and it remained silent throughout the entire testing period. The size of the seat tube has been reduced on the Stumpjumper across all sizes. My bike was fitted with a Specialized command post dropper, and even throughout all of our very, very muddy rides, the post maintained a level of testy smashing velocity right to the very end. My bike was also fitted with a natty little SWAT multi-tool, which lives underneath a swivelling lid which is integrated into the steerer of the bike. I honestly thought this was a bit of a gimmick at first, but it's actually really useful, and having that tool right at hand, not rattling about, and spring-loaded, so it comes out very easily, is actually a really nice touch. As you can probably tell, I got on very, very well with the new Stumpjumper. However, I'd probably class myself as being quite progressive when it comes to mountain bike geometry, having been radicalised by the likes of Seb Stott. And very steep and twisty technical trails is what I enjoy riding most. And for those types of trails, long slack bikes make sense. Understanding that there is this corner of the market which needs to be filled, Specialized has also developed the Evo version of the Stumpjumper. I'm not going to focus too much on the build of this, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the frame, but this alloy-only build for the time being is essentially a much longer, much slacker version of the Stumpjumper. What's quite interesting is rather than focus on small through extra large builds, Specialized is selling the Evo in either S2 or S3 builds. This is a system which was first used on their demo downhill bike, and rather than focus on things like standover height or seat tube length, it actually just relates to the length of the bike. So obviously for smaller riders, you're probably going to want to go for the S2, but if you're in that middle ground where you kind of work with both sizes, it means you get to choose between progressive and really progressive. On our third day of riding, we were shuttling in one area. This was great because it meant I got to compare a number of bikes back to back, and I spent a little bit of time on the 27.5 version of the Evo. In comparison to the regular Stumpjumper, the S3 sized frame which I rode has a 475mm long reach, which isn't the longest out there, but it is pretty damn long for a 150mm travel bike. It's got a 63.5-degree head angle, which is verging on downhill bike territory, and it's got a 328mm bottom bracket height, which is truly low. The time I spent on the bike proved that the bike is incredibly capable and very, very fast, but so far removed from the regular Stumpjumper ride. The suspension platform is very, very similar, but the shape of the bike is so far removed that it just feels completely different. But it's probably the one I would go for. It's definitely not as poppy, it's definitely not as playful as the regular Stumpjumper, but as an out-and-out speed machine, it is incredible. I don't want to say too much more, because I haven't spent too much time on the bike, but it's one I'm really looking forward to spending more time on in the future. Likewise with the regular Stumpjumper, I've done a fair bit of riding on it already, and I've really enjoyed my time on it, but it's a bit early to make any solid final conclusions. With that said, if you're looking for a really fun, really playful bike, which is also incredibly confident in tougher terrain, I think the new Stumpjumper is very, very unlikely to disappoint. So there we have it. If you've got any questions or you don't think I've covered anything, check out the article on BikeRadar.com with a link in the description. Or if you've got any other questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them.